Growing my business and preparing for the next boom is the most important thing that any of us can do. And that is what I want you all singularly focused on, because the next 6 months are really going to feel like the bust more than the last 6 months, the last 12 months have. Rates are high. We're going into a darker time overall for number of transactions to happen. It's going to feel worse than it has. It's going to feel more like a bust than it has. And that is the time for you to put every bit of your effort into doing the hard things and preparing for that next boom.
Welcome back to another Behind the Scenes with LPT Realty. Super excited to have Robert Palmer with you guys today, our founder, our leader, our CEO. He's going to be talking about 4 main things. The first one is the market. Oh, I love that we get this information from Robert Palmer. It's one of the greatest gifts that we get. Number 2, they're going to be talking about ending Q4 strong. Listen, this is the time to create the momentum for next year. Number 3, habits. Man, it's all about creating those positive habits to help you create the success and the goals that you want. And number 4, going into some more detail about why we have an unfair advantage in the real estate market by using the Listing Power Tools Kit. My name is AJ Ackerman.
I'm Mark Ammons.
And we are Elevated Agents.
All right, guys, welcome back. Hey, we're going to jump right into this. Robert is going to start talking a little bit about some mortgage updates. You know, again, Robert is really kind of our subject matter expert when it comes to the mortgage industry. He stays on top of all of this. He's also the founder and CEO of a billion-dollar mortgage company, so the guy knows what he's talking about. So Robert wants to go through a little bit of discussions about the 10-year Treasury, how it's relating to interest rates, and just overall what you need to know as an agent to be educated on this and have the best knowledge and tools for your clients to help them make the best decisions.
Yeah, so one of the big things we track on the mortgage side of my life is the spread, the mortgage spread between the 10-year Treasury and mortgage rates, and that had been widening pretty consistently going into the last, probably 7 to 10 days or so.
And when it's widening, what's that?
So that means that interest rates are getting worse compared to the 10-year.
Okay.
So if the 10-year goes up a little bit, mortgage rates were going up more, which is troubling, and so that spread narrowed last week. So even though we saw the 10-year bounce around a little bit, mortgage rates are all in all better. We're not talking great, but we're out of the 8s, which is a great place to be.
Right.
There's Powell spoke on Thursday, which we talked about on Real Estate
Fed
First
chair.
Friday. The Fed chair. I was I try to be an amazing husband. I spent most of the day with my wife, but I did tell her, like, hey, from 2 to 2:30 I got to watch Powell speak, and she's been with me long enough to know, like, yeah, that's going to happen. So we're at Capitol Grill, finished our lunch, and I watched Powell's speech, which she's a loving wife and was totally she's watching it with me, right?
Right.
And it was crazy because these climate protesters busted in and like disrupted his speech, and he got caught on a hot mic. Like, it was pretty exciting for finance nerds like myself, where usually these things are very, very drab. But he sent rates back up a little bit. He sent the 10-year back up a little bit, but mortgage rates held, so that was really positive because that spread has continued to narrow. So we'll see. I mean, a lot of people think we are at the peak kind of peak raising cycle, like rates have peaked on the 10-year side. We'll see. I mean, a lot of us thought that back in Q1, and we were wrong.
Yeah.
So you never know. Big inflation report. I think that's really what everyone is now waiting for. CPI and PPI come out in 24 and 48 hours from now, 8:30 a.m. tomorrow morning and 8:30. It's either Wednesday or Thursday. I think it's 8:30 Wednesday, but definitely 8:30 tomorrow morning. And those are going to be big movers because inflation is the hot button, and these are the measures of inflation. So we'll see. A crazy number there in one way or the other, and all bets are off with where rates go. Mm-hmm. And so just, look, if you've got somebody who's on the fence, it's probably safe to lock in today. If you want to talk to your mortgage loan officers, your trusted advisor, be like, hey, I know this big report's coming out tomorrow. Do we want to be safe and lock ahead of it? It's a conversation worth having, especially if you have a consumer who's on the fence. Now, again, they could get way better tomorrow, way worse tomorrow. They could do nothing. We don't know, but it is a serious potential mover if that report is out of line with expectations. And we've had a decent amount of that. I mean, there's been a lot of people guessing that inflation was going to come down faster than it did, and it didn't. Guessing that the job market would have cracked much worse by now than it has. We saw a slight crack at the last employment report, which everyone kind of cheered, and mortgage rates got better, but it wasn't that bad of a report, honestly, especially when you factor in, the auto workers union striking and some of the other stuff going on. I guess I'm a little more skeptical that we're 100% out of the woods as far as inflation and rates. I mean, I do think we're in a good spot. We're in a better spot than we were 2 or 3 weeks ago. The very end of October was ugly, and so we'll see. And then it's been a wild ride. And obviously our business is very impacted by moves in interest rates because it has massive impacts on our clients' payments. But then more importantly, lately it has this massive impact on sellers' willingness to list. And I think we're going to see some of that crack now because there was so much cash in savings. A good friend of mine, who manages some of my money, is at a very big bank, and he said they're reporting that their deposit accounts, or like the savings accounts, are finally starting to dwindle. They're expecting that a lot of consumers are going to burn through that cash kind of saved up here in Q1. But the amount of cash that was saved up in the economy made it easier for sellers to say, hey, we're just going to sit on the sidelines. Maybe we'll buy a new house and keep our old house. We have enough cash for the new down payment. Where now, as the savings starts to dwindle and the economy gets a little tougher, we'll see. But we need more listings, which we're starting to see in some markets. If you track MLS statistics, we have seen an increase in listings in some select markets around the country, really starting to pick up a little bit. Price reductions are starting to happen. So, while again, this is not doom and gloom 2008. I do think we're going to see people starting to get a little more realistic in certain markets to say, hey, I really do need to sell. I can't just hang out a crazy number and wait. I need the money, or I need to move on, or I need to realign. I can't afford to carry the 2 households anymore. So I'm now motivated to sell, where I think for the last 2 years, most people just weren't motivated to sell. They were just trying to figure it out any other way they could, waiting for things to change, right. Waiting for rates to come down, waiting for whatever they're waiting for. And I think the waiting is going to slow down a little bit because of just the financial situation. So,
yeah, that's that's important to note, because I read a few articles that talked about applications last week for mortgages were actually up just from that little bit of a dip. So the demand is definitely there. And to your point, there are people who are waiting on the sidelines who, maybe life is keeping them at bay. The interest rate environment is keeping them at bay. And when they finally have just even the slightest tick in the right direction, you're going to see that movement. And I anticipate we probably see something like that on the listing side, in the near couple of months as well too, going into Q1.
Yeah, well, one of the big leading indicators we watch is like the ultra luxury brands like LVMH. Their stocks down. They reported a little bit weaker demand. That I think that's the part of the market that's going to crack first. That super discretionary ultra luxury spending is where you're going to see the first real signs of the economy starting to pull back, or people starting to burn through savings. And look, ultimately, the things that put us in an amazing position as far as home price stability is all these homeowners with these super low rates. You're very unlikely to walk away from a home if you have a 2.75 rate or a 3 rate, because you may not ever be able to replace that. Right. And if you go back to 2008, 2009, the opposite was happening. You had all these homeowners that were stuck at 7.5 rates, 8 rates, which sounds so high today, but they were the norm back then. And they couldn't refi to the lower rates because they had no equity. And so that was getting more people to actually walk away. That was creating a lot of the short sales. And then if you remember, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac came out with a program called HARP, which allowed upside down homeowners to refinance. And that was actually one of the first things that started to stem the tide of the short sale and foreclosure crisis, was letting people take advantage of rates that were lower then. Well, today we're in the exact opposite situation. All the homeowners have these very low rates and rates are very high. And so that's motivating people in the opposite direction to say, hey, we're going to stick it out. We may let something else go. We may not pay a credit card bill on time. We may not do something else. But we're going to keep our house because we don't want to lose. Right. We don't want to lose this super low rate, right, because it may be irreplaceable.
Yeah.
I think it's so absolutely imperative right now for agents to stay aware of what's going in the market, and not just with mortgage rates and interest rate and what the Fed's doing. I think that's definitely one thing that's really important, but also it's important to see what's happening during this transition. We're in Southwest Florida, Mark and I, and as I pay attention, I think that we are in one of those leading markets. It's one of those markets where, we see things happen before other places in the country. And so what we've been seeing lately is a lot of inventory. Literally, our inventory has been twice as much as our pendings for the last 3-4 weeks. And so the reason that I mention that is because if you're not investing the time in marketing, in researching the market and making sure you're up to date with what's going on, then how can you continue to have positive conversations or conversations at all? You know, it's these conversations that you have with people about the market that actually helps you earn relationships, earn clients. And so one of the great things about these behind the scenes is that Robert keeps us up to date every single week. And it's just been so mind-blowing to hear that. Now, me being a positive, I've been in positive or personal development for over 20, I'm telling my age now, for over 20 years. And I just love the topic of growth, of personal development, of habits. In this next section, Robert's going to be talking about just that. He's going to be talking about how do you end Q4 strong? What are the things that you could be doing and focused on to make sure you're creating the momentum to have a successful 2024? Because guess what? 2024 starts today, right now. And what you do now is going to help you create the results tomorrow. So here we go.
Yeah, we talk about this a lot. One of the toughest parts about this business is the activities we do today, our efforts, we're going to see the results of somewhere in the future. And during a super hot market, that may be 60 days, right? I don't know that it gets too much narrower than that. You can stumble across a deal where like, hey, I meet you and we write a contract and I get you to the closing table in 30 days, 45 days, but that's really hard to do. And so the activities we do today at best are 60 days away from generating us income. But in a market like what we're in now, it could be more like 5 or 6 months away from generating us income. And that really, I think, is what separates kind of the agents who are going to crush it next year from the ones that are going to struggle a little bit. Is what are the efforts you're still willing to do even though you're not seeing it? You say, hey, I did the right activities 2 months ago and that should have turned into income now in November, but it's not. Maybe it's going to turn into income in February. You have to trust that process is going to hold and we're going to get there. And then continue to do the activities because it's harder and harder. The more months you go in a row of no result from your activities, the harder it is to stay committed. And that we talk about that a lot, but that's the most important thing you can do right now. If there's one thing you can learn from me and listen to me and trust me on is you've got to keep doing the right activities no matter how hopeless or pointless they may feel in the moment at times. You've got to continue to work that plan and know that the tools we've built here, the fact that we use print, it's stickier. It has that staying power. It can help you ride those longer waves of time where, the digital ads, the Facebook stuff, all that's great, but it's more ephemeral where you get that 7 home buyer strategies or 9 critical questions into someone's hand. It's still there. I saw an agent post that, she wrote a thank you card to a neighbor, thanking them for putting up with the traffic from her open house. They called her 4 or 5 months later to list, after that thank you card. Like this is the stickiness of print. And so again, doing those right activities and staying in front of your clients, staying in touch with your database. The holidays are a great time to do that. You can get out there with pumpkin pies. You can get out there with, poinsettias. You can get out there with a Christmas ornament. There's plenty of great excuses to go do pop buys. Not Popeye, Popeyes. Just popping by your past clients' homes, popping by your Sphere's home. And I'll tell you, when you're in that neighborhood, if you're going to visit a past client, you might as well go visit the handful of neighbors on either side at the same time. Throw out some pieces from the prospector pack, drop off some 9 critical questions or 7 home buyer strategies or the short form summaries. Again, all those tools are available inside of the Connect Marketing tab. And this is the time of year to get that stuff in people's hands. Empty the box.
That's right.
The results from emptying the box. Some you will see more immediately, like open house boxes. We continue to get amazing reports from agents emptying the box, the open house box, and seeing record traffic at their open house, having people come to the open house with the actual door hanger or flyer that invited them to the open house in their hand, showing that like, oh, wow, there's a direct correlation between these activities. It's not always so obvious, but there is correlation. People don't just stumble in there for no reason. But then again, a lot of that's going to come later. A lot of it's going to come as the needs change, as the market shifts, as people have to make a decision. You are positioning yourself to be the agent they choose. And that's really, I think, what we're doing right now is all about.
Yeah.
Yeah, great advice there from Robert on really how to finish up, the end of the year and taking those action steps. This is a really easy time of year to take your foot off the gas. And the cool thing is, I think that creates an opportunity because so many people are taking their foot off the gas that if you just keep doing what you're doing, nothing else, nothing extra, right? Nothing more. Just keep your foot on the gas. It puts you in that unique position to where after the first of the year, which is when everyone else is going to start taking action, you've been taking action. You never stopped. And so you don't have to rebuild. I think that a lot of people make that mistake of taking their foot off the gas, and you lose that momentum. And momentum is a great thing. When you've got the wind at your back and you've got it carrying you, it's so easy to keep going. But once you stop, even for a little while, AJ and I have seen this in videos sometimes where we'll have travel schedules. It takes us a while to get a video out, and then we got to kind of get back in the groove, and it takes longer. And so, I love what he's talking about there. The next thing Robert's going to go into, this is a long section, but it's really, really useful. He's going to talk about habit building, habit replacement, and how to kind of build the right habits around your real estate business to get the long-term results. And he's going to tie in a lot about the marketing material that we have here at LPT Realty and how to make habits around that. It's material that we know works. So Robert's going to go through how to kind of build the right habits to get the most out of the material that we offer.
Cool. I kind of want to parlay that into the next concept of, forming habits that have positive impacts towards your business. And so, we're going to anchor this conversation in like a health conversation, because I believe the majority of us value being healthy, right? No one's like, hey, I love being sick, right? Like we all want to be healthy. So in that sense, if your goal is to be healthy, and let's say you want to build muscle, lose weight, who knows, whatever your individual goal is, but you want to be healthy, the fastest way to do that, let's say you have drinks a couple of times a week. If you say, hey, I'm just going to drink more water, but I'm still going to drink same amount of alcohol that I do, you're going to see some benefits because you're drinking more water, right? But if you say, I'm going to replace those alcoholic beverages with water, every time I feel like having a beer, I'm going to drink water instead, you're going to accelerate that. And so that concept can be applied in what you do inside his business as well too. Like, hey, I don't feel like maybe making this call today, so instead of just giving up and doing nothing, I'm going to replace that with another positive behavior, which could be emptying the box, a feature there where I don't necessarily have to talk to anybody, but I'm still putting the business in. So I know that you think about these things and you are a person who is routined in positive thoughts and behaviors and outcomes. So how do you, what advice would you say if someone's looking to try to, replace some of the habits that they've got that aren't productive with something that could help their business move forward?
Yeah, I think the real key to this strategy, this idea of replacement, because it is very powerful, is you're taking something that has become a habit for you. And I think that's step one, is like, hey, let me identify a handful of habits that I believe I am, are a time suck, or I believe I'm wasting time on, or preventing me from being productive, whatever that is. And it's like in your example, that's saying, hey, I'm going to identify a habit I have, which is I have an alcoholic beverage this many times a week. So I'm going to identify that because I know that's going to happen. Mm-hmm. And then I'm going to replace it with something more positive, mm-hmm. Which in your example is water. Well, in our business, we can say, hey, what am I doing? What are 5 things that you all could write down right now you're doing in a week that are not necessarily productive, right? Is that spending too much time on social media? Is that, maybe watching a TV program? Is that, I don't know, the amount of time you spend in line at Starbucks, whatever it is.
Right.
And so some of these you can say, hey, I'm going to replace that. So I'm going to, whatever, if I like, hey, I want to watch Monday Night Football, I'm going to give that up and I'm going to make calls during that window of time. Or, hey, I find myself on social media at this window of time, right before I pick my kids up from school, I'm going to go empty the box during that time. And I think the key is by taking one of the current less than, we're not going to call them bad, but less than optimal habits today, right. And then linking it to doing something that is productive, your brain's going to say, hey, I want to go do that. And then it's easy to say, but don't do this instead.
Right.
And I think that really is the trick to say, hey, you know what? Every time I'm in line at Starbucks, I'm going to make calls. And if I want to get my Starbucks coffee, I'm going to call clients while I'm in the line. The whole time I'm in line, however long that is, if it's a super long line this morning, I'm going to make 4 calls, 5 calls. If it's a short line, I may make 1 call. At some point, I'm going to tell the client, like, hey, hold on a second, I got to pay for my Starbucks. And they're probably going to laugh and, think that's like, hey, you're a real person. You're like in your life, but you're still making your calls and checking in. And so like triggers like that, like, hey, the minute I hit the line at Starbucks, I'm pulling out my phone and I am dialing leads or contacts in my sphere, whatever it is. It's about taking the habits that are already in your life and creating them and turning them into triggers to then do something positive. And in some cases that will be complete replacement. In other cases that will be, just supplementing, right? And so like, and again, this idea of like stacking is massive. So when I used to run a lot, like before we had Luna, I would run 5-10 miles, 3-4 times a week. And like that's a lot of time. Mm-hmm. And so I started listening to books or podcasts, or I would hold executive calls like during these like running sessions. Like Levy and these guys were around during that window of time. I had more time to myself. I really enjoyed the running, and so I would just go get on the road for like an hour, and I would have an executive meeting in my headphones while I'm running. I'm huffing and puffing, and they're all holding the meeting, or I'm listening to an audiobook, or whatever it is. Just something to keep moving forward by stacking. And so I think those are the two things. There's a replacement, which says, all right, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to I'm not going to be on Facebook from 2 to 3 or 2 to 4 every day. Whatever that window is when you find yourself picking up the phone, or, hey, I love watching Jerry Springer, which comes on, and I don't know if that's even still on the air, but whatever it is, like, we all have our little guilty pleasures. I'm going to, every day, as soon as Jerry Springer comes on, I'm going to leave the house and I'm going to go door knock a neighborhood. I'm going to go empty a box. This idea of like replacement or stacking on top of your existing habits, because if you just anchor things into the abyss, you may forget, you may not remember. Correct. So by identifying the things that are most habit in your life, so again, for me, every morning I drive Reagan to school, I drop her off, I sit in line at Starbucks, and then I come to the office, and there's like a 30 or 40 minute window in there that I'm super productive during that window of time. The minute I drop Reagan off, it triggers me to now start making calls or whatever. If she's on her iPad while we're driving to school, I'm listening to Bloomberg. If she'll have a conversation with me, which is most mornings, I don't let her bring the iPad, we'll have a conversation. But as soon as I drop her off, like, that's a trigger for me to say, all right, pick up, start making calls. Yep. And so I do that kind of through that whole window of time. But yeah, it's a really great strategy. So I think that's if you want actionable ways to do this right now, think about what are like 5 or 10 things in your week that are habits, and then rank them. Like, what are the best habits? What are the worst habits? What are habits you need to replace? And then what's an activity you can replace it with? And then which habits can you stack? Because maybe they're not necessarily negative, or you don't want to give them up, but you can stack and be productive while you are doing that particular thing. And just those two little tweaks in your day will drive big results.
Yeah, it really will. And one thing, it's simple, but it's also hard, right? Like, it sounds like, oh yeah, that's great, I'll just go ahead and do that. But it's really hard to form that habit. It takes a little while, and my recommendation is I pick 1 or 2 and then start there, because what we see is people get excited about an idea, and they want to try to 3 or 4 or 5, and that's a disaster. Right. You probably lose it all. But do 1 or 2 things, and like you said, maybe it's a full replacement, maybe it's a partial replacement. Hey, instead of watching the entire football game, I'm going to take second quarter, and I'm going to miss that one, or whatever, or whatever quarter it is that you decide. I'm just going to take one of those, and that's a supplemental thing. I'm still going to enjoy the entire, the game, but I'm going to take a piece of it out. And I think that that's really important, and you will see impact in your life if you do it consistently. Now, if you only do it 1 or 2 times and you give up, well, then you should have just watched the entire game. You missed it. But if you really form a habit, which generally takes 3 weeks, 21 days of doing that, you will start to see some of these benefits, and it becomes easier, it becomes more routine, and then you start to get the positive impacts of that. And that's a way to really push things forward. And this is really important when things are less visible, when results are less visible. You have to extend relationships longer. You have to extend how long you're talking to clients. Like, there's all these things that are extending that require you to be more committed, and with, I guess, blind faith, I guess you could say. And so I think that's a great way. I'm appreciative that you kind of walk us through that, because, working closely with you, we get to see how productive you are. And you think, we all have 24 hours in a day. How does one person accomplish so much more than the next? And it's really little things like that that can really help move the needle for you.
So I'm reading the chat here, and apparently there's a book about this called Atomic Habits, which I have never read. I'm going to go check it out. So that's fantastic. So I guess if you want to learn more about this topic, we've got some chatter saying Atomic Habits is the book. I'm actually, Tracy, will you order that for me? I want to check that out.
Yeah, I have it.
I love it, and maybe we'll add that one to my library. I have not read that one yet.
We should start like a book club, like things that you're like reading right now.
Yeah.
Power of Habit came from the audience. That's Miranda Candy.
Yeah.
By the way, she's going to be teaching a luxury class today at 11 o'clock. So if you're interested in understanding how to do branding yourself in the luxury space, and why it's so important to building your relationships, definitely tune in at 11 a.m. She's going to be walking you all through that.
Yeah, the other thing I want to touch on, Matt, is like, you said it's not easy, it's hard. And I think in markets like this is where that really becomes more evident. What I would tell you is the easier stuff is really struggling right now. Mm-hmm. Like, the hard stuff is what's working. You got to be willing to do the things that other agents won't. When I say easier stuff, like, pay-per-click, buying leads, like, this stuff is easier. It takes money, and it takes resources, but it's easier. It doesn't take the sweat equity. It doesn't take changing habits. It doesn't necessarily take as much discipline. And those are the types of activities right now that we are seeing struggle the most in this market, because there's not enough of it. And everybody wants that easier route. And so the easy route is getting harder and harder. And then the stuff that is quote unquote harder is actually working better, like getting out in the community, passing out like sweat equity, getting door to door, getting belly to belly, having conversations, calling, talking to your sphere, getting out in neighborhoods and meeting new people. This is what I would call the harder stuff that most people don't like to do, which is doing better right now because less people want to do it.
Right.
Where the other side, we've seen like pay-per-click leads is a big one in real estate. And, we do a lot of it. A lot of our agents and teams, rely on it. It's getting harder and harder. There's more and more competition. There's less results there. There's less people searching. You've got homes.com single-handedly raising the price of pay-per-click in all of these markets. That used to be something that was quote unquote easier, that has now gotten very expensive and is not driving the kind of results it did once upon a time. And then the quote unquote harder stuff, the stuff that requires your time, your effort, that requires you to change your personal habits, is where we are seeing the agents find the most success. And again, that is this whole concept. I talk about this a lot. For those of you who are newer, when we are in a boom, we should be preparing for the next bust. A lot of people didn't do that in 20 and 21 and early 22. They expected the boom to continue forever and made business decisions accordingly, and now they are suffering for it. I spent the entire boom preparing for the bust and getting ready to launch a brand new company at the bottom of that quote unquote bust. And when I say bust, this is not a bust like 2008. This is not home prices busting, obviously, but number of transactions is down so dramatically. I mean, we're going to have one of the worst years for existing home sales in a very, very long time this year. I mean, this is a bust as far as unit counts. And now that we're in the bust, we have to be preparing for the next boom, because it will come. Because every homeowner who is not buying or selling right now is getting more and more stuck in whatever would normally have motivated them to buy or sell. And when we see rates come down a little bit, when we see inventory go up a little bit, whatever's going to shift, you are going to see a massive acceleration in activity, and that will create another boom. It's a cyclical business. We ride the cycles. We rode the boom. We rode the bust. We'll ride the next boom. And you've got to be doing the activities today to prepare yourself for that next boom, because it is coming. We don't know when, but it is absolutely coming. And the activities you do today, the harder activities, the ones no one likes to do, the ones we don't want to talk about, the ones we think maybe I'm too successful to do that anymore, or I don't have to door knock anymore. I'm too cool for that. I'm too good for that. I've moved on beyond that. Whatever it is, and we all have these things, right? Whatever it is in your world, I know I have them in mine. Like I'm not cold calling anymore. I'm Robert Palmer. I'm the CEO of all these companies. I'm not going to cold call. Look, in a bust, I will pick up the phone and cold call.
That's right.
And I think that's an important mindset shift to say, you know what, I'm going to do the hard things. I'm going to do the icky things that I feel like, the things that I worked so hard to outgrow and told myself I would never have to do again. Those are the things I want you doing right now. And again, that's the hard stuff, because we all worked really hard to grow out of whatever it was. Once upon a time, that was me and Jill stuffing envelopes and mailers, till midnight every night to get direct mail out, making cold calls, door knocking, getting out of the community, whatever it is. We all have those things. We said, you know what, when I'm X successful, I'm not going to do that anymore. I want you to go back and remember all of those and start doing them right now, because we are in a bust, and those are the activities that will prepare you for a boom. Because everyone else out there who is not going to make that mind shift backwards, who is going to continue to focus on I'm too good for that stuff, I graduated into this stuff over here. Like for me, that's TV and radio. I graduated into TV and radio. I'll never go back to the other stuff. Wrong. In a bust, I will 100% go back to the other stuff, because growing my business and preparing for the next boom is the most important thing that any of us can do. And that is what I want you all singularly focused on, because the next 6 months are really going to feel like the bust more than the last 6 months, the last 12 months have. Rates are high. We're going into a darker time overall for number of transactions to happen. It's going to feel worse than it has. It's going to feel more like a bust than it has. And that is the time for you to put every bit of your effort into doing the hard things and preparing for that next boom.
That's awesome, man. That's great thought and great inspiration. And, just to tack on, I was speaking with an agent over the weekend who has an expensive listing, like $5 million and some change, and they did the open house kit. They went out there, they did the sweat equity of putting out the door hangers and inviting people there, and had somebody come through based on that. And that person said, hey, I'm actually looking to sell my house and purchase a new property. So they're out there touring. And again, this is the house that she did the open house at is not under contract, but they got business from it, and it was from doing the hard things. You're thinking, oh, luxury agent, $5 million. I'm not going to go out there and walk the neighborhood and put out, open house collateral. And she did, and it results in additional business. And so to your point, do the hard hard things now because that's what people are not willing to do. You're never too good to do the things that got you to where you are. So
that's it. Yeah, I think one of the interesting thing there is there's really two easy outs she overcame. Like one, oh, this is a luxury listing. I'm not going to door knock. I'm going to put out door hangers. But then two, we don't have a luxury collection, open house box. So it's like, well, I can't use the standard open house box on my luxury listing. Wrong. Like, don't make excuses. While yes, we are working on an open house luxury pack with the better paper and stuff, anything you do is going to get results. And I love that she overcame both of those easy ways to say, you know what, we're not going to door knock a luxury neighborhood. Oh, and we're definitely not going to door knock it with a standard open house pack. We need a luxury collection open house pack, which doesn't exist yet. She overcame both of those easy ways to talk herself out of doing the hard work, right? You start with something we don't like to do, then you get two easy outs, saying, oh, it's luxury and I don't have the right material. And in the end, you do it and you win. And that's what it's all about. And the other thing I will say is as we go through this period, I think that we are going to see more pressure put on negotiations around commissions, right? Commissions have always been negotiable, but now there's so many headlines about it that you're going to see, I think, more consumers negotiating harder around commissions. And this is where listing power tools and the luxury collection and all these things we built are so critical. They were designed for two things: to help you win the listing and to help you with that all-important commission negotiation, because there is no set rate. You don't deserve anything. You deserve whatever that seller is willing to pay you for your services. And so by having listing power tools, by having the active marketing plan, by having the 9 critical questions, by having the luxury collection, we are giving you the tools you need to show real value to any potential seller. And where this becomes important is, let's say you are competing against another agent who charges less than what you would like to charge.
That's right.
Right? Well, you have two choices at that moment. You can either meet them on price or you can show more value. And I'm not talking about scripts making up value. I'm talking about like real, actual value, tangible. Let me show you all the things I'm going to do that agent is not going to do, which puts you in the best possible position to negotiate the commission you want to earn. Because again, this is a negotiation between you and the seller. You want them to pay you a certain amount of commission that you've set in your life as your target, as your personal rate card, and you may have to show more value than anyone else to get that. And that is what the tools we've created here at LPT Realty are about: putting you in the best possible position to negotiate the commissions in a way that is most favorable to you, while still giving a great deal to your seller by providing the absolute maximum benefit, maximum exposure, maximum marketing, maximum expertise. And that is how you win. And as the market gets harder, you're going to see more and more pressure put on that. And that's where it's critical to have real, tangible items that you can show and use to build that value and show that value in that all-important commission negotiation when you sit down with a seller on any listing appointment.
That's amazing, man. That is great. Well said. There's nothing else that we need to say about that. So I hope that you guys are digesting this, thinking about what you can do with inside of your business to implement some of these things, figuring out what you're doing that's less productive and what you want to replace that with. And really try to, you've got the last part of this year to really anchor that in and make that a part of your full year for 2024. So
yeah, I want to jump in again. I'm reading the notes as we go here.
Yeah.
I see some people talking about like HOAs. Like, oh, the HOA won't let me put out the collateral. There is a neighborhood nearby that will. All right. So again, you've got a couple choices here. Again, we're always going to look for the how do I power through, how do I make it work? So hey, the neighborhood the house is actually in, the HOA president's going to run me out of there, not going to let me go. Great. Find the nearest neighborhood across the street, down the road, one exit up, whatever it is. Do not let that be the excuse, right? Remember, Betsy didn't let the fact that we don't have a luxury open house box or that it's a luxury listing not do the door knocking activities. Don't let the rules of that HOA or that condo, I'm not saying break their rules. I'm saying find an area nearby where you can do what you need to do. All right. And again, if you're in too rural of an area, great. Go into town. Like, go to you probably have some homeowner in a nearby gated neighborhood or a nearby subdivision where they don't have a lot of land, and you can go put out the stuff there if your actual listing is too rural. Don't get stuck too much in the, hey, well, if I can't do the actual nearby houses, it's not going to work. Absolutely not. That's maybe the best and highest use. Like, sure, great. Putting out the material in the exact adjoining neighborhood, that's option one. But if that's off the table, let's go to option two.
That's right.
Let's go find a neighborhood nearby. Let's go into town, right? All right, someone who lives out here in the sticks, right? If you're doing a big rural piece of property, where do they go grocery shopping? Let me go find the nearest neighborhood where is near where they go grocery shopping, because those people are probably dreaming about moving out into the
right.
bigger parcels of land when they get to move up in life, when they do a little better. The next raise I get at my work, I'm going to sell this subdivided lot here in town, really close to town, and I'm going to go out 10 miles out where I can get a piece of land. Go find where the next consumer looking for that house is and empty the box. There is no excuse to empty the box. Like,
that's right.
At the end of the day, I'm totally open to, we will make changes where necessary. Like, when people give me feedback, we definitely consider it. We look at it. We are kicking around hey, how do we build a more rural friendly box? But at the end of the day, the current box you can find somewhere nearby. Again, go one town over, whatever you got to do, and empty the box into the type of neighborhood that will allow you to do what you need to do. And this is why we built the prospecting pack, because for a lot of people, they said, well, I don't need the sign rider or whatever. I can't put that up. Well, great. Go over and order a prospecting pack, and now you got tons of jumbo door hangers, whatever. But I really believe that between the prospecting pack and the Just Listed Power Pack, you have the tools you need to make it work in any area. You just have to get a little creative and go outside the box, maybe open up your radius, go somewhere, but just empty the box. The listing is the excuse to get to empty the box. That's how I think about it.
Right.
It's not the other way around. I don't want you to think, oh, because I have this listing, now I need to go empty the box. It's, oh, thank God I have a listing. I now have an excuse to empty a box. And I want you to empty that box on whoever it works for. It doesn't have to be the exact neighborhood where the listing is. It's just your excuse for me to give you a free box so you can go empty it. And then you can buy more boxes if you want, and you can go empty those too, and you can have even more success. But the more stuff you put out there, the more results you're going to see. And hey, I love seeing everyone share those successes in the Facebook group. We're actually going to start featuring those here on Motivation Monday. So the way we've been doing the door hangers at the beginning, we're going to start taking screenshots of some of those posts where you're sharing your successes with the box, sharing your successes with doing the things that people don't want to do, because we want everyone in here to see, hey, this stuff really does work. Don't just take Robert's word for it. Let's see real examples from our agents. So if you are having success with the box, we want you to post that in the group. Maybe we'll come up with some creative hashtag. Why don't you guys come up with a creative hashtag?
Yeah.
Use some kind of creative hashtag that lets us know you're sharing your success. The empty the box is a great one, whatever it is. But we're going to start featuring those during the opening credits here on Motivation Monday, because we want to share those successes. In my book, Financial Ninja Handbook, which is for consumers about improving credit and stuff, one of the rules is share your successes. Because what we see is when someone is going through that financial rebuilding process, if they're willing to share their successes, now their friends and family members get more excited about being smarter with their money. And we want you all to share your successes so you all can get excited together about doing the hard things today. Because if you're not going to get that win of an actual closing off of it immediately, I want to give you the win of seeing your post on Motivation Monday. Right. I want you to get the win of all your friends in LPT and the Facebook group telling you what an amazing job you're doing and how proud of you they are. We can create some of those little wins along the way to help you stay focused and get through this difficult time. And that's what we're all here to do together. That is what the scale and the purpose of LPT Realty is, and we're going to all maximize it together.
If there was at least one thing that you took away from today, I hope that you paid attention to the concept of replacing habits, because that's one of the greatest ways to create new habits, is to take something that doesn't work for you and replace it with something that will. And so you kind of are working on two things in one. You're working on what am I willing to start doing and what am I willing to stop doing in order to become the person that I need to be. I love that. And I want to go back also to ending Q4 strong. I want to talk about New Year's resolutions real quick, because the new year's coming, whether you like it or not. New Year's is really close, and the majority of people are going to be doing what? They're going to be making New Year's resolutions. Well, I'm here to tell you that I don't do that. And the reason I don't is because I don't like the statistics. I don't like the fact that if you study this, almost 91% of people fail their New Year's resolutions. So that's not good odds. And what's even crazier is that 30% of the people quit in their first week. And so we were talking about getting started now. If you want to get ahead of your competition, then do what your competition isn't willing to do. And that's starting now. Because what actually happens is that when people wait till January, they actually don't get started till February. Right. It seems like, and it also depends on when New Year's Eve is too, right? If New Year's Eve is on a weekend, it seems like people can get started sooner. But when it's on a Wednesday, it's like that whole week is trash. But anyways, I wanted to just bring that up because it's just so important. And if you need to rewind and go back and listen to this, my challenge to you is, at the very least, when you're done with this, write down, what are the habits? What are the things that I know I need to start doing to help grow my business and become the person I need to do? And what are the distractions and the things getting in my way that I need to stop doing?
I love it. Yeah, this is a topic that AJ and I personally study a lot, just kind of in our personal lives, and try to implement a lot. So it really resonated with us, and definitely great advice there, AJ. Guys, hope you really enjoyed this episode. Again, just a lot of great updates on what's going on in the real estate industry, what's going on with us as a company, and helping you have the most up-to-date information from reliable sources that you can trust, so that you know when you're having conversations with your clients, you're speaking the truth and you're well educated. And if you've got well educated clients, they're going to acknowledge that and respect that and see you as the expert. This is the kind of leadership that we get to experience here at LPT Realty. It's one of the huge, massive value adds that I think we get here, is this kind of inside information. We love bringing you some of the highlights from these calls. But if this is the kind of leadership that you'd like to have, you're interested in learning more about LPT Realty, we would love to connect with you. So if you look down the description box below, you will find a link to where you can schedule a private one-on-one Zoom call with AJ and myself. We would love to connect with you, learn more about you, your business, your goals, what you're trying to do, see if LPT is the right fit and if we're the right sponsors for you. So we look forward to talking with you guys on a Zoom. We look forward to seeing you on the next Motivational Monday. And until then, be well.
Have an awesome day.